Hi guys, my name is Gary. I'm here doing a rebuild on a 1993 Honda Civic transmission, and I am doing this video for him because he requested me to do it, and I saw a lot of guides online that were not really complete or showed a lot of ways that I think were wasteful. So there's a lot of ways that you can take this tranny apart, and this is pretty much the way that I've done it. I've rebuilt dozens and dozens of these transmissions because of different problems, but this is the way that I do it, and this is the way I would suggest doing it. You don't need a press, you don't need anything complicated. You could do it in your garage, and you can do it on the back of your pickup truck if you wanted to on your tailgate. But let's get right to it, and I'll show you how you can do this in your garage and the real easy way to do things without presses and stuff like that. So first thing is going to be the very first bolt that you take out of this transmission is going to be the interlock guide bolt. This bolt right here has a 3/8 head on it. You can see that. That goes right here inside the transmission. See this? It goes in right there. And that is the very first thing that you're going to take out. Let me zoom in on that just to show you where it goes. That's going to be right here. You take that out, put a little bit of silicone back on it once you go to put it back in. Not a lot, just a little bit. Get that out, you can flip the tranny over. Always put a block of wood or something right here in order to keep the input shaft from actually laying on the table. So let me back this up a little bit so you can see a little bit better. So the next thing is that you're going to take this plug off, which goes in the very top up here, and I'll show that to you now so you can see it a little bit better. You can be taking that bolt off right there, or you can see down inside the tranny there's a snap ring in there. I don't know if you can see that very well, but what you have to do is take all of these bolts off as well along the perimeter, all the way around, and then there's 3 pry points for you to pull or break the seal on the silicone. There's one here, this little ledge right here. You can get a pry bar underneath there and then pry it up. You can also get a screwdriver or something right here underneath this ledge and pry up there. And then there's one more, but it doesn't actually have a relief. There's also one here. So one here, and then one here. So once you break the seal on the tranny, or actually get it where it's loose, you're going to take something like a screwdriver or something, put it under the far side of the case, which would be on this side. Just enough to keep it pried up. Because what you're going to do now on this side is take another screwdriver or a pry bar, and you're going to kind of use your leverage on this side to pry against this side so that this comes up evenly up. Because you're going to need to take this snap ring, open it up, and then pry up on the case. Now if you didn't have this in this other side, when you start prying up on it, it's actually going to tilt the case, and then this will get bound up. It won't come up evenly. And you'll fight with this thing for hours. Sometimes they're kind of a pain. So let me get a set of snap ring pliers and I'll show you guys how that's done. Sometimes if you pry too hard, it actually kind of works against you. There we go. Got the snap ring up and off. Now if you checked all your bolts, you should be able to just pull the whole case off. Now you look on the inside of the case, there's usually a bearing that comes off inside of it. It's this bearing right here. It's on the very top of the main shaft, right next to fifth. That usually gets stuck in there. Now if you have a problem with that, not wanting to come out, just turn the case upside down, give it a couple of taps with your hand, maybe with a dead blow, or you can just take a torch, like a little burnt butane torch, heat it up around this area right here. This area right here, just heat it up a little bit around here, and it will usually fall out with just gravity or a couple of taps. So let's set this aside. We'll continue on the top now. So before we can remove the main shaft and the counter shaft, we have to remove the reverse idler assembly. And it's two 10mm bolts right here. And then you also have one 12 that needs to be removed on the actual shift assembly. So let me get those out, and then we can continue on. So reverse gear assembly comes off. Pull the pin on reverse idler right here. That comes off with it as well. Set that aside. Two bolts that come with it are special. They're just a soldered bolt that locates the reverse gear assembly or shifter assembly. Make sure those go back in the same spot. So now, in order to get the gear stacks off, I'm going to turn this around. There's a bolt down in here for your shifter. It actually actuates your gears or your shift works. That bolt right there. So in order to get to that, what you're going to do is actually move your shift selector and your shift rod until it lines up, just like that. Push it in. You're going to take your 12mm, take that bolt off. There's a little shim that goes on that. It's actually a concave washer that keeps pressure on it so it doesn't fall off. Make sure you don't lose that. Set that aside, and then you can take out both of the shafts. Just wiggle it and it'll come out. There's both the shafts. Alright, now whenever you take this out, what you're going to see here is that actually whenever I took this off two little shims remained. I took it off. This is your actual adjustment shim for your end play on the input shaft. This is a concave washer that puts pressure on the shaft, keeps it preloaded. See how it's only wore down in the center, and it's wore down on the outside, not the center? The face with the cone goes down, just like that. And then the shim goes on top of it. So the easiest way to do it is just to put it back on, or to remember that the concave face, or I'm sorry, convex face goes down. Alrighty, now you can remove your diff. It just pulls right out. Check the diff bearings. They spin pretty good. No issues. Here we go. So there's a text you gotta read. Okay, so now I'm going to proceed with the main shaft and counter shaft tear down. Now we got the shafts out. 32mm socket takes off the big nut on top. I usually don't even unstake it. Comes right off. Washer that goes underneath it, that is also one way. Convex shape goes up towards the nut, so make sure you do that. Now to get these bearings off, this one's always going to be loose, but you have to put the race back facing upwards so that, well, I'll show you that as I take it off. To get this apart, I see a lot of guys saying, oh, you need a press or whatever to get the shaft apart. No, you just need some concrete. Everyone has concrete. So you're actually just going to take it, put it onto the ground, put a rag underneath it, and just give it a couple of taps. There's one bearing. Oh, there goes the other one. And there's the whole shaft assembly. Simple as that. For those guys that say, oh, you're going to damage the shaft, that shaft is many times harder than the concrete. So there's your bearings off. Here's your gear stacks. If you want to go farther than this, you can. Usually I don't have any issues with it down past that. If there is any issues with that, you're going to be replacing a lot more parts. You have those off, you're going to be replacing the bearings on that shaft. There's an axle seal bearing. Two bearings. Shaft seal. That's the one large bearing. And here's the big small one. Okay. Now to reinstall, just use a hammer. The one thing you have to be careful with is whenever you're redoing this shaft specifically. You need to be careful because putting this on, I'll show you, I'll go ahead and take it off and show you. First gear and second gear, there's these little friction dampeners. I replace these every build because they help a lot and they always get tore up. They're just little rubber stoppers. Now you have to make sure that whenever you're putting this back together, that those little rubber stoppers actually line up with these grooves. See those little tangs that are made into it? Those line up with these little tangs. They're actually made into it. So whenever you put this down on the shaft and it fits on top of the bearing, you'll feel a notch, or like a click, when everything gets together. And then you'll feel this will have a little bit of drag whenever you spin it. So if you lift up and then drop it, there'll actually be a little bit of drag. If it just keeps on spinning, it's free, you haven't lined it up yet. And what that causes is when you put it on, it will actually ride on top of those tangs and damage them, which is bad. It means you have to tear the tranny back apart. Not good. Both of these look fine. Go ahead and put it back together. Find the place where this matches up the best. And make sure that this is facing upwards. Make sure that that's facing upwards. If this is like this, you will have a lot of issues. Like stuck in reverse and grinding and all kinds of shit. Get this thing to line up. There we go. Lined up, nice and free throughout the whole travel. Before you put it back together, you want to take a look at the teeth. Look at the teeth all the way around. You want them to be sharp, not so much rounded. You want them to be nice and sharp all the way around here. If they're rounded, it means that you've had grinding issues. Same thing on the other side. This one looks pretty good actually. So go ahead and put that back on. Feel it lock into the teeth. Slide that down. Now you're going to put the second up. Put the synchro. Look at the wear surfaces. This one looks good. Put this back on. Drop it back down. Make sure that your little friction dampener is in. Place it back over. And you're going to press down on the actual bearing itself because that presses on those little tangs, and you're going to rotate. And then you should be able to feel it physically lock up. If you don't feel that, then it means you need to rotate it again until they drop in. There you go. Now you're good to go. So I'm going to do this. Put that down. Some of these are physically harder to put on than others. A lot harder. So you just got to work it, find the best place on the shaft where it likes to sit, so you can tap it back on. Let's see on the main shaft. Oh, oops. No, that's right, that's right. I tripped myself up. Sometimes these are very stiff. Like really stiff. Good old bash. Alright, so the friction dampener's lined up. That is, yeah, that's correct. Got that one's down there. It's a little stiff. Just give it a couple of taps of the hammer. Before you fully get it bottomed out, check both of your gears like this. You want to make sure that those tangs are lined up on the friction dampeners, because if they're not, you will smash them and then you will be rebuilding this transmission. You'll have issues with first and second. You'll have noises because this will have play in it after you crush it, and then they wear out. Then you'll have play because this gear will not be loose. Yeah, it'll cause a lot of issues. So let's go ahead and work on knocking this down. Feel it? Shouldn't be any up or down play. Shift it first, second, Shift's good, then you're good to go. Let's go ahead and put these bearings back on. This bearing right here goes on like this. You use the original socket or a piece of pipe or anything. Now usually it bottoms out because on the inside there's a ridge on these Harbor Freight sockets. So usually you either have to get a bigger socket or pipe or something. Like this. That one's got it too. Oh, oops. I forgot to put the gear on. Oh, that was my mistake. Shoot. This goes on. This goes on. Now this goes on. So this. Now you take your race, put it on. Slide it on over your bearing. Now that's installed. So now you've got pretty much everything on your countershaft done. You got your bearing. This one was trash. Usually these ones, these two bearings, and your input shaft bearing, which is this one right here, which is shot. You can hear it. It's done. Other ones to go. This one out of the package. That's input shaft. This one, which is on the output, and this one, which goes right here. Now I just looked on Honda for the small bearing, or the 55 millimeter bearings. They go by the differential size. 60 millimeters the biggest, 55 the smallest. Then you have this bearing right here, which is no longer carried by Honda. I just looked it up on Majestic Honda. They no longer have this bearing for sale anymore. This bearing right here with the two-piece is no longer for sale. However, I have used an ISB, or not, an input shaft bearing before for this. It's a little tight, but it is the same size. So see if maybe it'll fit on yours. So you're going to take this, go ahead and tap it on home. There you go. Take it, and then you run it down until the notch lines up. we go. Done. And that's the counter shaft. Counter shaft is done now. So take hammer, screwdriver, peen over that end. Whatever you fancy, some kind of metal object. Take it, peen over this end. There you have it. That tranny is done. Or not the whole tranny, just that shaft. So there you go. Feel your gears. They should turn freely, but they should have noticeable drag. It shouldn't be, you know, you shouldn't be able to spin them and they just keep going forever. It's not what you want. So if your shaft looks like that, then you're good to go. Let's move on to the input shaft. Input shaft right here. Take your shims off on the top. Take your bearing off on the top. Put it on the table. Sometimes you have to give it a good tap. And it comes off. The input selector is really hard. It's really on there. Wow. That is really, really on there. Holy crap. There it is. It should never be that tight. There's something wrong with that. The big thing on the main shaft that you're going to be looking for is, for one, anytime that you have a bearing grenade or something go wrong in this shaft, the shaft is oiled through these holes right here. So let's take a look. Oiling hole there, there, there. It's drilled all the way through to right here. Oh, no, just those two holes right there. One right there, one right there, one right there, one right there, one right there. And these are all for oiling on the bearings. Now if you have any one of those plugged up inside of that shaft, it will burn up the bearing, because all this is lubricated by is actually by oil being submerged and actually being compressed into these holes right here through the bearings going around them, and that's what kind of pressure lubricates the whole system. So you're going to look through it with a light, make sure it's not clogged up, make sure everything's nice and clean, clean it if you have, you know, the option to do that. If everything looks good, put it back together. One big thing you're going to probably see is if you're doing this for an ISB, you're probably going to see wear right here. Really, you know, depending on how bad the ISB is or the input shaft bearing is, you're going to see a lot of wear right there. So if it's really excessive, like this one's pretty bad, you might consider just replacing the shaft. But if it's not that big of a deal to you, or you're not going to keep the tranny for that long or the car for too long, then just slap it back on and call it good. The big place that you're going to look for is right here. Here on these places right here are the big problem makers, because even though that this may cause a lot of issues long term, this actually has a bearing that rides on it, whereas the bearings themselves actually ride on this surface. And if this is burnt, this will cause problems very quickly, with bearings being brunelled and heating up. All kinds of bad things happen right here. So just watch out for that. Polish it if you see any nicks. So the next one is going to be this assembly right here. Your 3, 4, and 5. So here's third gear. Look at the teeth. Third usually gets ragged on pretty hard, but usually I don't see a whole lot of issues with third by itself. It looks good. Put the bearing back in. Put your synchro back on. Now, for first, second, and third, I didn't see any problems with the first and second synchros on this. I already looked at them. But to check these synchros, you're actually going to put a feeler gauge right in between these synchros and then see how much play you have. Now, I've never seen a synchro bad on one of these Hondas. And I've seen a lot of these Hondas. I've done quite a few of these transmissions. I haven't seen a single one that was bad. And everyone complains, well, my shifter's grinding going into third, fourth, fifth, whatever. It's usually going to be either your shift forks, these guys right here, that are actually cracked or bent, usually broken off, and that causes this guy right here, your shift selector, to not evenly engage all the way, which causes a lot of issues, all kinds of issues. Whereas you'll get grinding, you'll get, just everything under the sun you can think of, you'll get it. So, if you have a tight selector like this, maybe you'll consider getting another one. I don't know why that's so tight. Anyways, put that back on. Put your shift selector back on. Tap it back down into place, whatever you gotta do. Make sure that you remember the orientation of this. And don't put it on backwards, because if you do, you won't have third or fourth. That would suck. Ask me, I've done it. I've done it a lot. What are you laughing for, Michael? Is there something funny about that, what I just said?
Ooh, good times. Good
Pulling
times.
a transmission back out because I forgot to flip something the right way. Yeah, it happens all the freaking time.
Good times.
Yeah, all the time. That's good stuff. So you put this back on. Just give it a couple of taps. Make sure when you're tapping this back on that you line up your keys. Because if you forget to do that, you're going to be really pissed. And make sure that you flip it the right way. Like I didn't do. I specifically told you guys to do that.
Okay, take a listen.
That's why I always double check. Always double check. There you go. That's the right way. There you go.
I was thinking with the dipstick.
There you go, Kenny. Oh, actually go on here. This goes on like this. You have two notches that you actually line up in here. If you can see, there are some missing notches in there. I don't know if you can see that. Those line up with these U shapes right here that go up. So make sure that you get those in the right orientation. So you're going to take this, put it on just like that. Whenever this is on correctly, you should be able to take this ring off. So if you have it in upside down, and then take it back off and fix it, you will have problems. Once you get that lined up, you're good to go. Running on now. There's nothing to line up on this one, you just make sure everything's good to go. You got the synchro engaged in with the little slot there. Have the snap ring on the synchro. If you forget that, that will suck. Take it back off. Line up your teeth. Teeth go up. Put it back on. Now, I see a lot of problems with these synchro rings themselves. Okay, so you want to make sure that they move really freely. If they don't, you got your sandpaper or whatever you need to do, but you need to polish them or clean them up, because if these get stuck, you will have grinding and problem shifting and all kinds of issues. So make sure that they're just smooth. Whenever you put it down, it drops into place and comes back off easily.
Not that big right there.
Yeah, it goes on this one. Take that. The only problem I usually see with these synchros, they don't usually wear out. What usually happens is that the shift selector actually ends up wearing down this snap ring right here. This little ring. This gets worn out and the teeth eat it up. And that causes you to have notchy shifts, it not wanting to go into gear, getting stuck in gear, all kinds of weird issues are caused because of that. You take your two-way bearing assembly, slip it on there, put it down of your shaft, line up your synchro correctly, line it up, put your next one on. This is 5th gear. Put your bearing on. This one I usually have no issues with. 0 issues with this one. That, give it a little tap, 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 tap. Oh, come on. Use the socket. Alright, there we go. And there's your main shaft. You make sure that all of these spin freely, that you can go up, down, they hold, they're not too loose. You know, whenever they're in gear, that they easily slide up and down fully, because if you have this on backwards, you will have issues. Okay, then center it up. Make sure that 5th gear rolls nice and smoothly. And put your final bearing on. Now this bearing right here, this big one right here, that maybe got stuck in your case when you took it apart, goes on top of here. Don't forget to put the selector on. And the thing about 5th gear selector is make sure that the teeth on this are facing down. Don't put this on upside down. That would suck. You'd have to put it, pull it apart again if you did accidentally what I said to do last time. These. Make sure that engages correctly. Put your bearing on. You want the letters facing outwards. And you want to make sure that the bearing goes on the shaft. And that the shaft should be flat or flush with this bearing. If it's sticking up, you have something stuck down here somewhere. So just remember that, it's got to be flush. And do not put this bearing in the case. In the outer case half, and then put this back together, because that will cause a misalignment issue with the shaft, and then you will have a lot of issues, possibly. Just always put it on the shaft when you're putting it back together. That down, put your shims back on, and then you're done with that. Now, there's only a couple more things left to do on the bearing. You got the input shaft bearing right here, this guy right here. You got the input shaft bearing seal. You have the counter shaft bearing that goes in the case, which is right here. Usually just check it by doing that. See if it has a lot of play, see if it sounds real notchy. This one looks good. Now what usually happens is that this case bearing actually walks out of the case. It's really common. Happens all the time. Pretty much every one that I ever take apart, it's walking out. So what I mean by that is this bearing right here, this one right here, actually ends up coming out of the case this way, and it starts rubbing on the bottom side of your gear right here underneath. And that causes all kinds of weird funky problems. But you'll see some of them look shiny underneath, right here on top, because it's starting to walk its way out. And the quick fix for that is first, take a punch or something, tap it all the way in the case. You'll hear it when it sounds solid. Okay, that's solid. Next, you take your least favorite Phillips screwdriver, take it and go around the corners of the case and just give it a light tap. As you can see, I've made multiple small dimples around the bearing, and that's just to swedge it in there, to hold it in there real well. Next, this pile of crap is making all kinds of noise. That's ugly. I've seen some of those bearings fall apart to the point where they've broken the case in half. Okay. So let's... flip it over. Take a hammer. You're gonna want to put some kind of rag or something on the other side. Take that same Phillips that you had from before. You're gonna reach down in there and you're gonna pop the bearing. Probably some more. Usually a piece of wood or something. There it is. Now if that's out of your way, take that bearing out and you admire its beauty. How much of a pile of crap that is. Take the seal out, which usually I do with a hook device of some sort. You can do it a couple of different ways. You can do it with either with a long screwdriver, because what you're looking to do is get that seal out from inside there. Now that the bearing is out, you can do it with that. You can do it with a pry bar, which I'm going to try and do now. Sometimes it doesn't work. Main thing is you don't want to scratch where it goes, because that would be a major pain to fix. Yep, pry bar worked. Pull the seal out. Throw it into the junk pile. And let's put the new seal in. Now we're ready to go. Now we're finally to the rebuilding part of the training. So you're going to wipe this out. Make sure that the seal area is nice and clean. Nice and clean. Get your new seal. Right here. Yeah, I'm gonna put some serious plastic into this. Come on. So, there you go. Put your seal in it. Remember the orientation of the seal. It goes with the inside facing inward. So this face goes in. If you put it like this, you'll have leaks. Don't do that. Put it like that. We get seal installer, aka a socket. Put it in there. Couple of taps, make sure it's in there all the way, make sure that your spring's still good. This is an 1.1/8" socket, 12 point, it usually works fine. Just put it in there and tap her home. Alright, now you're ready to put your bearing in. Remember that the words face outwards. You want to put the words out, don't put it like that, that's backwards, put it like this. Make sure that your seal is nice and lubed up. There's grease on it, whatever. Drop your bearing in there. Okay. Now as you can tell, I wasn't hitting the inside race. You don't want to do that. You want to hit the outside around it and then gently tap it in whenever it's about to get home. But remember this, that this is the main reason we tore this tranny apart. This input shaft bearing. This is what causes 99% of the problems. The big three that cause problems on this tranny is the input shaft bearing, the outer input shaft bearing that goes into the housing, the outer clutch housing, and these two bearings right here. This case bearing for the counter shaft usually doesn't cause any issues. The diff bearings are usually pretty solid. Other than that would be broken shift forks. Right here, these shift forks, check them for wear and cracks. Usually it's first and second and third and fourth. First, second, third, fourth. This is third, fourth, first, second.
Yeah.
fit.
You can't see anything.
No. Again, I could see it.
Now.
Now you can see it. Right there. Check this. Check it. Make sure it's good. Other than that, not a whole lot more to do other than just put it back together. So I guess I can film that. And what is the major reason for rebuilding these transmissions? What causes all these billions of input shaft bearings to go bad? That is the billion-dollar question. And the answer is gear oil. And you're probably sitting there going, what do you mean gear oil? I mean oil that is too thick for this transmission to properly circulate. And I can't tell you how many trannies I've redone just because of it. It's as simple. You know, you just take off your drain bolt, which is on the other half of the transmission. Take it off and smell it. Does it smell like gear oil? Does it smell like rotten eggs? You're going to need your tranny rebuilt. Because that gear oil is so thick that it cannot be properly circulated through the bearings, which then causes this. Yeah, that's a pile of junk. And I have done countless of these trannies because of that. So, word of advice, don't put gear oil in it. Or else you'll be watching this video rebuilding your transmission. Yeah, well, it's up to them. So now you're going to clean off your case halves. Probably should have done that before, but I'm making a video, so whatever. Take your magnet out here. See all that yummy goo you got on there? That's good stuff. That's not going back in. Just kidding.
No.
So now, let me get a razor blade. I'll clean off the case halves, put some silicone on it, drop the shafts in. Alright, let's finish this up. So, take your main shaft, line it up with this. Make sure your shafts are all in the right spot. Drop it in there. Take your counter shaft, wipe off the lower bearing surface because it probably has dirt on it or whatever, and drop it into the 1-2. Okay, now if those are lined up, you'll be able to look at your gear spacing right here and see if you screwed up. I kind of screwed up. Okay, there you go. And see if you actually got your spacing right. Because if this looks weird or there's something off, then you'll see it now. Everything looks good on this. So let's go ahead and drop it in. Make sure that your spacers are on there. And flip this around. Put this in there. Line up all your holes. Now the only part that's kind of a pain on this, for one, you need to put a spacer under there so that the main shaft can come down all the way. Flip this around, and you're going to look right here. I don't know if you can see it, but right here becomes a problem, because you can see nothing is lined up correctly. So you have to kind of work it in, lift up and down, line up all of the selectors right here so that they're all flat like a small channel, and then push this in. And that's what I'm going to do right now. Once you get it in, it'll all drop down and work perfectly, in theory. So let's go ahead and do that. Oh. Let me get the camera lined up right. There you go. Do that. Pry up on some of them. Sometimes you'll lift up on this. There it goes. Alright. now this bolt goes back in right here. Maybe lined up a little bit better. It's pretty lined up. There it is. Doesn't need to be that tight. Wipe that off. Now you're ready to put the reverse and idler back on. Put your reverse idler back in, right here, and off the pin. Pin can go either way, it doesn't really matter. Put this in. See that? That's wrong. Don't do that. There's one way. Let me prove my point what I'm talking about. See that? If you put this on upside down, it will sound like this while you are driving down the road. So don't do that. Yeah, nice. Okay, now you put your reverse assembly back on. Now one of the things that you can do on this is accidentally flip this up and lose a little ball bearing that goes down the bottom. So if you look right here, you can see that you can move it up, and then if you move it all the way up, there's a ball bearing that can fall out. So I usually don't even take this apart, there's no reason to. If you can go into both actions or settings and it works fine, don't mess with it. Put it on. Yes, yes, I did that.
Don't mess with it.
Yeah, don't mess with it. Hey, hey, hey. Right? You making fun of my hand signs? Huh?
Stop it.
Tighten down these two pins. Okay. And that pretty much completes the transmission rebuild part. So now you should be able to spin the input shaft and select through the gears at this point. So you can dry shift it. So you can go ahead and do that. I could show you how to do it, but I mean, you can understand how to do that. Just shift the selector up or down, and moving it up or down either way, and you'll be able to spin the input shaft and watch everything move. Ooh. Okay, so now to the outer case half.
Okay.
Yeah. Here is the outer case half. So clean that off. Clean off the magnet real quick. Do not forget to put this magnet back in. I mean, it's just a good idea to have parts that came out of it go back in. Put that back in. A lot of metal on it. It's pretty normal if you had a bad ISB or a couple of bad bearings. It's not uncommon to see. Now what's not normal is chunks. If you see chunks of metal, you have issues. You need to find out where those chunks came from, or else they will rapidly stop your transmission from being a transmission. Alright, flip this over. Switch to this now. Clean this off. Like this. Take all old silicone off, grease, oil, blah blah blah. Whatever the hell it is. And off real good. Who is this guy next door? This dude's hilarious.
What idea.
Okay, so
Oh no.
another part that you have is down in here. You have this half right here. This actually is where this bearing right here on the outside of your input shaft goes. Now under here, sometimes you can see some junk under there. This one looks pretty clean, so I'm going to go ahead and leave it in. But this is a selective snap ring, and then this is your oil guide. So if you see junk in there, or it's dirty, take it out, clean it. Remember to put that snap ring back in, or else you'll have a lot of play on your input shaft. Alrighty, so let me get this in. Put a little bit of silicone around the whole case, just a little bit. Oh no. This dude's hilarious. Put a little bit around the case half, all the way around. I usually go back and smooth it over. That way I know I'm not getting a whole lot inside of the transmission, because all it takes is a little bit of silicone inside of the case halves to block up an oil port and completely ruin a good tranny. And that would make a lot of people very sad.
And angry.
Yeah, sad and angry. So take that, wipe your hands off, and you just want a thin coating. Doesn't need much. These case halves are actually pretty well machined. So if it has a small amount all the way around it, you're good to go. You don't want any going crazy, hanging out inside of the transmission. There's no need. No need for that. Just take it, go around with it. You just want a small bead all the way around. Just kind of covering up everything and stuff. There we go. Looking good. Put that all the way around. Just make sure it's covered. Nothing's in. You bored, Michael? No? You thoroughly entertained?
I am.
That's good.
It's always entertaining to
Interestation?
watching you try to teach.
Teach what?
Teach the masses.
Oh, the masses.
The masses.
Well, you're welcome, the masses. Me making a very crappy transmission rebuilding video. Okay, so now your stuff's on there. You got your first things to check before you put it back together. Silicone and everything is that you want to check and make sure that your magnet is in, that these shafts rotate freely. Everything's good to go in that department. Everything looks good. Got your bearings on, they're smooth. You know, you want to make sure that your bases are all checked. And then you can either, I'm doing this out of order, but now is a good time to do your axle seals if you wanted to. I'll go ahead and do these. So knock it out. It's way easier to do it when they're inside the transmission, where the case halves are bolted up, in my opinion. Go ahead and drop it on. Should drop on and it'll stop once it gets to the snap ring up here, right there, up there. Can't see. It's sitting on the snap ring right now. So, in order to fix that problem, what you're going to do now is you go snap ring pliers, and all you have to do is spread them apart and kind of wiggle it. It will go, trust me. It's kind of a pain, but it will go. And there it is. Now, once you get it on there, you're gonna be like, oh no, that case half. Look at that. The snap ring's not completely seated in the bearing. Don't worry about it. You bolt this thing down, flip it upside down, and give it a light tap. Give it a light tap upside down on the concrete. It'll seat the bearing fully. You'll be fine. And that's pretty much it. And there's nothing else to it. Michael has this beautiful concoction of someone's engineering on it. Isn't that beautiful? That is nice right there. That's good stuff.
Yeah, that's a beautiful piece of shit. Isn't it?
Yeah, that's beautiful. Okay, other than that, run up your bolts. Don't forget to put a little bit of sealant on this bolt that goes back in the top. Let me go ahead and put a couple of 12s in here just to hold it down. The big thing is whenever you get these trannies back together, you want to make sure that this thing rotates without binding. If you have any kind of binding after you actually bolt up these case halves, you have an issue and you need to fix it. You can't just, you know, think that, oh, it's binding, it'll free itself up. Yeah, it's going to machine something. It's going to cause issues for you. So, let me get this 12. Oops. Where's the bearing? Get a couple of 12 started in there. Flip over. Check. Should be free. Might sound a little clunky at first. You know, they all do. Oh, you hear that? That was a snap ring. And sure enough, it's... Damn, I'm good.
I just need to work on your videos.
Yeah, my video taking skill sucks. Considering this is my first video on rebuilding anything, it's much easier for me just to rebuild it than to talk about it and rebuild it.
You should be a professor at a college.
Yes, well you see here, transmission exhibit A. No, I'd fall asleep.
At your own lecture?
Yeah, sure. My own monologue. 20 words or less.
Blah, blah, blah. Are you done yet?
Are you done yet? Okay, so now you have what I was saying before is the interlock guide bolt. It's the last thing to go in. And it's a big deal because if you don't put this in or if you put it in wrong, you can screw up your tranny. So I don't know if you can see it. Let's see how well this thing goes in or out or whatever. But inside there, oh, it's not focusing. Inside of here, there's two small little, like little guides, I guess you could call it. It's like a channel. Now, if you shift this tranny into the wrong gear, which I will try to show right now. Oh, actually, if you have this in reverse or, yeah, right there. There you go. If you have this in the wrong gear, when you try to put this bolt in, you will have problems. What I mean by that is it will actually cause it to get stuck or not be able to go into fifth gear, because this is what it actually sits and kind of rests on, and that causes it to pivot off of this bolt, which then gives you fifth in reverse. So you won't have fifth in reverse. So don't do that. Look inside there. You want to make sure that there's two channels are open. You can stick a screwdriver in there and feel it. Oh yeah, there's room. If this thing is tight to put in for any reason, do not keep going. You will regret it because you will have to take the tranny back apart if you want fifth or reverse. Who wants that, right? Put a little bit of sealant on it.
I thought it was in the wrong gear.
No, it's fine. It's funny because if it was flipped around the other way, I could actually show it to put into fifth and reverse, but it's actually in second right now. So, I mean, it's fine. They get it. You guys get it, right? You guys get it. I got it. Tighten it up. Good to go. That's it. There's nothing more. I mean, I could show you how to do the axles, but that's boring. Who wants to see that? There you go.
They might.
You want to see it? I guess I'll do it. You want to see my pain of me making these videos? My pain?
You can edit this shit out, right?
I edited a lot of stuff on this video. There's going to be like 2 words in the whole video.
Problems and regret.
Yeah. Regret, don't do that, and it's not a transmission.
Yeah, that's 20 words or less.
Yeah, that would work. I should make 2 versions. The long version and then the 20 words or less version. Just no sound and music added. That'll work. Axle seals. Anything flat. Just take it and first off, you want to start it kind of evenly. These are kind of a pain. That's the only thing that sucks about these axles. Usually, they get all cockeyed. And they're all cockeyed. See how it's all cockeyed? That's cockeyed right there. There you go. That seal has less cockeye on it.
Why not?
That's a cockless seal. Put the seal in. And don't forget to put this guy in before my sealant dries up. Once I put this in now.
What's your looking for?
Ah, there it is. The JB Weld sealant. I didn't know that JB Weld even made sealant. My mind has been blown. I thought JB Weld just made epoxy. But no.
I'm gonna send it over there.
So, let's just go over the do's and don'ts of Honda D-series transmissions. Do use the right oil. Don't put gear oil in it. Very simple. It's a very simple guide. Right? Smart, huh?
Pretty short too.
Yeah, that's good.
20 words or less.
Yeah. Very simple. Don't put gear oil in it. Simple. I don't know if I made that clear enough yet. Don't put freaking gear oil in it. 10W30. That's what you need to put in there. 10W30 and W. Like W. Bush. Put that in there. That's it. That's it. That is it. Okay? The only thing I didn't put in was the axle seal on this side. But, I mean, you can figure that out. Just hammer. Hammer, plate, whatever. Put it in there. Done. Congratulations, you guys, on your rebuilt transmission. Bye.